Jake Morrison stood at the podium in the Galactic Council chamber. He had been standing there for nearly 10 minutes, trying to present Earth's proposal for new trade routes through the outer sectors. The routes would cut travel time by 30% and save billions in fuel costs. He had the data ready, the projections verified, and the engineering reports complete. But nobody was listening. The Gentari delegate was having a loud conversation with the Peltharian representative about their upcoming cultural festival. The Vaxorian science minister was reviewing documents on his datapad. The Mindari ambassador was actually asleep, his head tilted back against his chair. Jake raised his voice slightly. As I was saying, the new routes would benefit all member species by reducing transit times and increasing trade efficiency. The Gentari delegate, a tall being with blue-scaled skin named Vorth, waved his hand dismissively. Yes, we have heard enough. This proposal is typical of human thinking, small improvements to systems that already work fine. Why waste council time on such minor matters? Kate Sullivan, sitting beside the human delegation table, felt her hands grip the armrests of her chair. She had been Earth's secondary ambassador for 5 years. In those 5 years, she had watched this same scene play out dozens of times. Humans would propose something useful, something practical, and the council would barely pretend to care. Jake kept his voice calm. With respect, Delegate Vorth, a 30% reduction in travel time is not a minor matter. This would affect every trade ship in the galaxy. Vorth laughed. It was not a kind laugh. Perhaps for humans, who are new to space travel, this seems important. The rest of us have been managing just fine for thousands of years. We do not need human advice on how to run our trade routes. Several other delegates made sounds of agreement. The Trilithian observer nodded. The Kelthian representative smiled. Kate watched Jake's shoulders tense. She knew what he was thinking because she was thinking the same thing. This was not about the trade routes. This had never been about logic or efficiency or benefit to the galaxy. This was about humans knowing their place. And their place, according to the Galactic Council, was at the bottom. Jake returned to his seat. The vote was called. The proposal was rejected without discussion. Earth's trade route plan, which had taken 2 years and millions of credits to develop, was dismissed in less than 30 seconds. Next item on the agenda, announced the council speaker. That evening, Jake and Kate met with Commander Ryan Blake in a private conference room at the Earth Embassy. Ryan was a military officer, but he specialized in spatial analysis and sensor networks. For the past 8 months, he had been tracking unusual readings in the Cronus sector. It is getting worse, Ryan said, pulling up a holographic display. The spatial anomalies are increasing in frequency and intensity. We are looking at a major instability event, possibly a rift formation. If it breaks through, it could affect 5 inhabited systems. Kate studied the data. How long do we have? Best estimate? 6 months, maybe less. Jake rubbed his eyes. We need to bring this to the council. They need to start evacuating the at-risk colonies now. They won't listen, Kate said quietly. They have to listen. This is not about politics. This is about saving lives. But Kate had been at this longer than Jake. She had seen what happened when humans tried to warn the council about problems. She had watched human scientists present data that was ignored until an alien scientist presented the same information months later. She had seen human engineers solve critical problems and then watch as the credit went to their alien supervisors. Still, they had to try. 3 days later, Jake requested emergency council time to present Ryan's findings. The request was approved. But they were given only 15 minutes at the end of a long session. Ryan stood before the council and explained the situation. He showed the sensor data, the mathematical models, the projected timeline. He explained that the Cronus Rift would tear open space itself and make 5 systems uninhabitable. He recommended immediate evacuation of all colonies in the danger zone. The Council's chief scientist, a Vaxorian named Thelkor, examined the data for exactly 40 seconds before looking up. "This analysis is flawed," Thelkor announced. "The mathematical model uses human assumptions that do not account for quantum variance in subspace layers. The sensor data is likely corrupted, and the timeline is pure speculation." Ryan tried to respond. "Sir, with respect, I have triple-checked every calculation. The model has been peer-reviewed by 20 human scientists and 5 alien researchers who agreed with the findings." "Human scientists," Thelkor said, making the words sound like an insult. "And which alien researchers agreed? Let me guess. Junior researchers, graduate students, not anyone with real expertise." "Actually, 2 of them are department heads at major universities." Thelkor smiled. "Then I question their judgment. The Cronus sector has been stable for centuries. A few sensor anomalies do not constitute an emergency. I recommend the Council dismiss this panic-mongering and move on to actual business." The vote was swift. Only Earth voted to investigate further. The proposal was rejected. Jake stood up. "People will die if you ignore this." "Commander Morrison," the Council speaker said coldly, "your time is up. Please sit down or leave the chamber." That night, Jake could not sleep. He sat in his quarters staring at Ryan's data. The numbers did not lie. The rift was coming. Thousands of people, maybe millions, were in danger, and the Galactic Council did not care because the warning came from humans. Kate found him there at 3 in the morning. "I have been thinking," she said, sitting down across from him, "about Protocol Exodus." Jake looked up. Protocol Exodus was a classified Earth government plan. It had been created 50 years ago, shortly after humans had joined the Galactic Council. Back then, Earth's leaders had looked at how other species treated humanity and realized that one day humans might need an exit strategy. The protocol was simple. If humanity ever decided that membership in the Galactic Council was no longer beneficial, they would leave. Not with war, not with threats. They would simply pack up and go home. Every human in galactic space would return to Earth. Every human facility would be abandoned. The borders of human space would seal shut. It was the nuclear option, and it had never been used. "You think we are there?" Jake asked. "I think we passed there about 100 slights ago," Kate said. "We have been members of this council for 200 years. In that time, how many times has anyone listened to us? How many times have they treated us as equals? How many times have our ideas been stolen, our warnings ignored, our people dismissed?" Jake was quiet. "They do not want us here," Kate continued. "They want what we can give them, our work, our innovation, our labor. But they do not want us. They have made that very clear. If we leave and the Cronus Rift happens, those colonies will not be evacuated. If we stay and keep warning them, those colonies still will not be evacuated. Jake, they are not going to listen. Not to you, not to Ryan, not to any human. We could have perfect data, absolute proof, and they would find a reason to ignore it." Jake stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the lights of the council complex. Ships from 100 worlds came and went. The galaxy looked peaceful, ordered, civilized. But it was built on a lie. The lie that everyone here was equal. The lie that all voices mattered. The lie that merit and truth counted for more than species and status. He pulled out his secure communicator and typed a message to Earth. To the President, to the Joint Chiefs, to the people who had the authority to activate Protocol Exodus. The message was short, just 3 words. "Initiate Protocol Exodus." He sent it. Kate watched him. What happens now? Now we wait for Earth to decide. If they agree, we start pulling everyone out. Every human in galactic space comes home. Every human facility closes. Every human ship returns to our borders. And then? And then we let them see what the galaxy looks like without us. Jake looked back at the council complex. In a few months, if Earth approved the protocol, all of this would be behind him. He would go home. Humanity would turn inward, seal their borders, and let the galaxy solve its own problems. Part of him felt guilty, but a larger part felt relief. They had tried. For 200 years, humanity had tried to be good members of the galactic community. They had worked hard, contributed their ideas, helped solve problems, and asked only for basic respect in return. And they had been treated like servants. Maybe it was time to leave. The response from Earth came within 48 hours. It was brief and formal. President Lisa Chen had convened an emergency session of the World Council. The vote had been unanimous across all Earth nations and colony worlds. Protocol Exodus was approved. Jake received his orders the next morning. He was to begin the withdrawal process immediately, but with one critical instruction. Everything must appear normal. No announcements, no dramatic speeches, no explanations. Humanity would simply leave, quietly and completely, over the next 6 months. The goal was to give the Galactic Council no time to interfere, no opportunity to make promises they would not keep, and no chance to stop the humans from going home. Jake called a meeting with every human in the diplomatic compound. There were 47 humans working in various council departments. When he told them the news, some looked relieved. Others looked sad, but nobody argued. "We have 6 months to get every human out of galactic space," Jake told them. "That includes diplomats, scientists, engineers, merchants, medical staff, everyone. Earth Fleet is already organizing transport. Your job is to resign from your positions professionally. Give notice. Train your replacements if asked. But take all your work with you. Every file, every research note, every piece of documentation. Anything that belongs to you comes home." Kate raised her hand. "What do we tell people who ask why we are leaving?" "The truth. You are returning to Earth. Personal reasons, family matters, new opportunities. Whatever feels right. Just keep it simple and unremarkable." Over the following weeks, humans across the galaxy began their quiet exit. They submitted resignation letters, they packed their belongings, they booked passage on Earth ships heading home, and the aliens around them barely noticed. Commander Sophie Bennett had been running Gateway Station for 7 years. The station was a massive structure positioned at a critical junction point where multiple trade routes converged. More importantly, it housed the primary subspace communication network that connected the entire eastern spiral arm of the galaxy. Sophie had maintained that network personally. When she first arrived at Gateway Station, the communication system was failing daily. The original Peltharian designers had built something functional, but fragile. Sophie had spent 3 years completely redesigning the system, making it stable, efficient, and expandable. Nobody had thanked her. Her official title was Assistant Network Technician. The credit for the improved system had gone to her supervisor, a Peltharian named Korth, who barely understood how subspace relays worked. When Sophie submitted her resignation, Korth looked annoyed. "This is inconvenient timing," he said. "We are about to expand the network into 2 new sectors. I will need to find another assistant." Sophie kept her expression neutral. "I am sure you will find someone qualified." "When are you leaving?" "In 3 weeks." Korth waved his hand. "Fine. Train your replacement before you go. Make sure they understand the basic maintenance procedures." Sophie nodded. She did not mention that the maintenance procedures she had written were 40 pages long and assumed the reader had a degree in subspace engineering. She did not mention that she had made dozens of modifications to the original system that were documented only in her personal files. She did not mention that without her, the entire network would probably collapse within 6 months. She just packed her things and prepared to leave. Dr. Ben Carter worked in a research hospital on the Mindari homeworld. He specialized in cross-species medicine, finding treatments that could work for multiple alien biologies. It was complex work that required understanding hundreds of different genetic structures and biochemical processes. Ben had been working on a cure for Kelthian blood rot, a disease that was spreading through refugee populations. He was close to a breakthrough. Another few months, and he would have a working treatment. When he told his Mindari colleague Dr. Nexal that he was leaving, Nexal looked surprised. "But you are in the middle of important research," Nexal said. "I know, but I need to return to Earth." "What about the Kelthian project?" Ben had spent 2 years on that project. He had run thousands of tests, analyzed countless samples, and developed 3 potential treatment approaches. All of that work was documented in his personal research files. "I will send my notes to the hospital administration," Ben said. Nexal nodded, already looking distracted. "Yes, fine. Someone else can finish it." Ben did send his notes to administration, but he sent them in their original form, written in English, full of human medical terminology and referencing human research that most aliens had never studied. Without his explanations and guidance, the notes would be nearly impossible to follow. He took copies of everything with him when he left. The same pattern repeated across the galaxy. Human engineers working on construction projects submitted their resignations and took their blueprints home. Human traders closed their businesses and transferred their assets back to Earth banks. Human teachers left their schools. Human technicians left their repair stations. Human pilots returned their commercial ships and boarded Earth military transports. Captain Alan Hughes commanded a human merchant vessel that had been running trade goods between 12 different worlds for 10 years. He knew every port master, every customs official, and every loading dock supervisor along his route. He had greased the wheels, solved problems, and kept trade flowing smoothly even when tensions ran high between different species. When he received his recall orders, Alan was docked at a Trilithian trade station. He offloaded his current cargo, collected his payment, and filed departure paperwork. The station master barely glanced at him. "Heading out? Going back to Earth space. Have a safe trip." That was it. 10 years of regular service, of reliable deliveries, of friendly relationships, and nobody asked him why he was leaving or when he might return. Alan pointed his ship toward Earth and never looked back. At Gateway Station, Sophie's last day arrived. She had spent 3 weeks writing out basic maintenance instructions for her replacement, a young Peltharian technician who seemed confident but clearly did not understand the complexity of what he was inheriting. "So I just run these diagnostics once a week?" the replacement asked, looking at Sophie's simplified instructions. "That will handle routine maintenance," Sophie said. "But if anything unusual happens, you should consult the technical documentation." "Where is that?" "It is in the system archives, filed under Network Administration." What Sophie did not say was that the documentation was written in English, used human technical notation, and assumed the reader understood principles of subspace physics that were not commonly taught in alien universities. She also did not mention that she had made hundreds of small adjustments to the system over the years, little fixes and improvements that kept everything running smoothly but were never officially documented. The replacement would figure all of that out eventually. Or he would not. Sophie walked out of Gateway Station carrying a single bag. 7 years of her life had been spent keeping that place running, and her boss had given her a brief nod and wished her well. Back on Earth, the returning humans were welcomed as heroes. There were no public ceremonies because Protocol Exodus was still classified, but within the human government and military, everyone understood what was happening. Humanity was standing up for itself by walking away. Jake Morrison arrived home 4 months after initiating the protocol. Kate Sullivan came with him. They both received promotions and new assignments. Jake was made director of Earth's External Affairs Department. Kate became his deputy. Their new job was to manage what came next. By the 6th month, the withdrawal was complete. Every human in galactic space had returned home. Every human station had been evacuated. Every human ship had crossed back into Earth territory. The borders of human space sealed shut. Earth fleet positioned warships at every entry point with orders to turn back any non-human vessels. Subspace communication with the outside galaxy was cut off. Human merchant ships stopped making trade runs. Human diplomats stopped answering messages. The galaxy's human population, which had numbered in the millions across hundreds of worlds, simply vanished. Jake sat in his new office on Earth and watched the final transport ships arrive. The last group was from the outer colonies, humans who had been working on deep space research stations. They looked tired but relieved. Kate came into his office carrying a data pad. Final numbers. We got everyone out. 3.2 million humans returned to Earth and our colonies. 0 casualties. The operation went perfectly. Any response from the Council? They sent one formal inquiry asking about the embassy closure. I sent a polite reply saying Earth was restructuring its diplomatic presence. They accepted that? Kate smiled. They have not asked any follow-up questions. Jake leaned back in his chair. They really think we are that unimportant. They are about to learn differently. The Galactic Council held a brief session to note humanity's withdrawal from Council affairs. The general tone was dismissive. A few delegates expressed mild surprise at how suddenly the humans had left, but nobody seemed concerned. Perhaps they finally realized they were out of their depth, Vorth the Gentari said, to scattered laughter. The Council voted to redistribute the responsibilities that humans had held. The maintenance of Gateway Station would continue under Peltharian supervision. The medical research projects would be reassigned to Mindari scientists. The various construction and engineering projects would be completed by the original alien contractors. Everything would continue as normal. The galaxy would barely notice humanity's absence. That was the assumption. The first crisis happened 11 weeks after the last human left galactic space. Gateway Station's communication network crashed at 0400 station time. One moment, subspace messages were flowing normally across the eastern spiral arm. The next moment, everything went dead. 6 sectors lost all communication simultaneously. The new technician, the young Peltharian who had replaced Sophie Bennett, stared at his console in confusion. Red warnings covered every screen. System diagnostics showed cascade failures across multiple network nodes. Nothing made sense. He tried the standard reset procedure. The system crashed harder. He tried the emergency backup protocols. Half the remaining nodes went offline. In a panic, he called his supervisor, Korth. Korth arrived 20 minutes later, looking annoyed at being woken up. He looked at the displays, and his annoyance turned to concern. "What did you do?" Korth demanded. "Nothing. I ran the normal diagnostics like Sophie showed me. Then everything failed." "Well, fix it." "I do not know how." Korth pushed the technician aside and started working the controls himself. He had designed the original system decades ago. He knew how it worked, or he thought he did. But the system he was looking at did not match what he remembered. The architecture was different. The routing protocols were new. The entire network structure had been redesigned so thoroughly that he barely recognized it. "What is all this?" Korth muttered, scrolling through screens of unfamiliar code. "Sophie said she made some improvements over the years." "Some improvements? This is completely different from my original design." Korth tried to implement fixes based on his understanding of the old system. Every attempt made things worse. By the time morning shift arrived, 9 sectors had lost communication. Trade ships were stranded at stations without routing information. Emergency services could not coordinate between planets. Financial markets were frozen because transactions could not clear. The Peltharian chief engineer arrived and took over. She was older and more experienced than Korth. She quickly realized the scope of the problem. "We need the humans' documentation," she said. "Where is it?" They searched the archives and found Sophie's technical files. The chief engineer opened the first document and stared at it. The text was in English. The mathematical notation was human standard. The engineering principles referenced human academic papers that none of them had read. "Get a translator," the chief engineer ordered. The translator arrived and began converting the documents. But technical translation was not simple word substitution. Human engineering terms often had no direct equivalent in galactic standard. Human mathematics used different symbolic systems. And Sophie's documentation assumed the reader understood principles that were apparently unique to human engineering education. The translated documents were barely comprehensible. "This makes no sense," Korth said, reading a translated section about subspace resonance calibration. "She talks about quantum phase matching, but uses a calculation method I have never seen." The chief engineer was reading another document. "This section refers to something called iterative harmonic balancing. What is that?" Nobody knew. They tried to reverse engineer Sophie's modifications by examining the system itself. But without understanding the underlying principles, they were just guessing. Every fix they attempted either did nothing or caused new failures. By the end of the second day, 14 sectors had lost communication. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The communication crisis was now affecting billions of people and crippling interstellar commerce. "How could this happen?" demanded the council speaker. "Gateway Station has been operational for 50 years. The Peltharian chief engineer addressed the council via the few remaining communication channels. "The system was heavily modified by the human technician who maintained it for 7 years. We are having difficulty understanding her modifications. Then contact her and ask for her help. We have tried. Earth is not responding to any messages." Meanwhile, in the Cronus sector, the spatial anomalies that Commander Ryan Blake had warned about were getting worse. The sensors that monitored that region of space had been maintained by a human research team. When they left, the monitoring station had been assigned to a Vaxorian crew. The Vaxorian crew was competent, but they had not been given proper training. The human team had developed a complex early warning system that analyzed hundreds of different variables to predict when and where spatial instabilities would appear. The system was automated, but it required regular calibration and adjustment. Without that maintenance, the early warning system began producing false readings. The Vaxorian crew assumed the system was malfunctioning and switched it to backup mode. In backup mode, the system only detected major anomalies, not the small fluctuations that preceded them. At 1830 station time, on a quiet afternoon, the Cronus rift tore open with no warning. The rift was a wound in space itself, a point where normal physics broke down. Everything within 2 light-years of the rift was instantly destroyed by gravitational chaos and radiation. 3 colonies vanished. 2 were mining operations with populations around 50,000. 1 was a Kelthian refugee settlement with nearly 200,000 people. The evacuation order came too late. By the time nearby ships realized what was happening, there was nothing left to evacuate. The colonies were simply gone. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. The chamber was full of shocked and grieving delegates. The Kelthian representative was crying openly. "We were given no warning," he said. "The early warning system showed nothing. How could this happen with no warning?" The Vaxorian science minister looked pale. "The monitoring station reported normal readings until the rift opened. We are investigating why the warning system failed." What they discovered made it worse. When they examined the monitoring station's logs, they found that the early warning system had detected the anomalies building for weeks. But the automated alerts had been filed in a subsystem that the Vaxorian crew did not know existed. The human team had checked that subsystem daily. The Vaxorian team had never been told it was there. Buried in the station's files, they found Commander Ryan Blake's original report, the one the council had dismissed. His predictions had been accurate within 3%. If they had listened and evacuated the colonies, everyone would have survived. On the Mindari homeworld, Dr. Nexal finally decided to continue Ben Carter's research on Kelthian blood rot. The disease was spreading faster than expected, and pressure was mounting to find a cure. Nexal opened Ben's research files with confidence. He was a skilled researcher. He had decades of experience. How hard could it be to finish work started by a human? Very hard, he discovered. Ben's notes were detailed, but assumed the reader understood human medical frameworks. He referenced human studies on genetic therapy, human research on cross-species immune responses, and human mathematical models for disease progression. None of these were familiar to Mindari medicine, which had developed along completely different theoretical lines. Nexal spent 3 weeks trying to understand Ben's first treatment approach. He thought he had grasped it and began implementing the therapy. The results were disastrous. The treatment he developed based on his interpretation of Ben's notes made the disease worse. 12 patients died. A formal investigation concluded that Nexal had misunderstood a key principle in Ben's methodology. But when Nexal tried to get clarification, he found that the principle Ben referenced came from a human medical text that had never been translated into galactic standard. The plague continued spreading. The death count climbed into the thousands. Across the galaxy, similar problems emerged. A major construction project on the Trilithian homeworld ground to a halt when the new project manager realized that the human engineer who had preceded him had designed the entire structure using principles the Trilithian contractors did not understand. The half-finished building could not be completed without understanding those principles. A mining operation in the Outer Rim shut down when their equipment failed. The human maintenance crew who had kept the ancient machines running had taken all their customized repair procedures with them. The replacement crew tried to fix the equipment using standard methods and accidentally caused a complete system failure. A diplomatic dispute between the Gentari and the Peltharians escalated into a shooting war because the arbitration process stalled without the human mediators who had quietly managed tensions for decades. The humans had never been the official mediators, just assistants and advisors, but they had been the ones doing the actual work of finding compromise solutions. The galaxy was breaking down. In the council chamber, Ambassador Thelkor stood before his fellow delegates. He had been appointed to head an emergency committee to address the growing crisis. He looked tired and stressed. We are facing multiple simultaneous failures across all sectors of galactic civilization, Thelkor said. Communication networks are down. Early warning systems have failed. Medical research has stalled. Construction projects are incomplete. Trade routes are snarled with disputes, and we are seeing an increase in conflicts that would normally have been resolved peacefully. What is the common factor? Asked a Trilithian delegate. Thelkor hesitated. He did not want to say it out loud, but the evidence was overwhelming. The common factor is the absence of humans. Every failed system was being maintained or operated by human personnel. Every stalled project had human engineers or managers. Every brewing conflict had been managed by human diplomats or advisors. The chamber was silent. But humans were just assistants, Vorth the Gentari said. They worked under our supervision. They were not essential. That is what we thought, Thelkor said quietly. We were wrong. The council speaker looked around the chamber. Can we not simply learn what the humans knew? We are advanced civilizations. Surely we can master whatever techniques they were using. Thelkor pulled up a document on the main display. It was one of Sophie Bennett's technical manuals for Gateway Station, translated into Galactic Standard. This is one example. We have been trying for 4 weeks to understand this human engineer's modifications to our communication network. We have made no progress. The translation is inadequate. The mathematics is unfamiliar. The underlying principles are taught in human universities, but not in ours. And every time we try to apply what we think we understand, we make the situation worse. He pulled up another document. This is the human medical research on Kelthian blood rot. We tried to continue the work. We killed 12 patients because we misunderstood the methodology. Another document appeared. This is the spatial monitoring system that failed to warn us about the Cronus Rift. It was designed by humans. It worked perfectly for 15 years under human operation. It failed after 3 months under our operation. The evidence kept mounting, slide after slide of systems that had worked under human management and failed without it. "So what do we do?" asked the Kelthian representative, his voice hoarse from grief. "We need the humans back," Thelcor said. Council archivist Nixara was a Trilithian who had worked in the Council archives for 43 years. Her species was known for perfect memory and careful attention to detail. She had been assigned a task that nobody else wanted: document exactly what humanity had contributed to galactic civilization so the Council could prepare a formal statement about their departure. The assignment was supposed to be simple. Humans had been junior members of the Council for 200 years. They had held minor positions, done basic work, and made small contributions. The documentation should take a few weeks at most. 6 months later, Nixara was still searching through records, and what she had found terrified her. She started with the obvious things: Gateway Station's communication network. The official records said the network had been designed by Peltharian engineers and was maintained by Peltharian technical staff. But when Nixara dug deeper, she found something different. The original Peltharian network had been functional but limited. It crashed frequently, had low bandwidth, and could only handle a fraction of the traffic that now flowed through it. Then a human engineer named Sophie Bennett had been assigned as an assistant technician. Over 7 years, the network's performance had improved by 600%. Crashes had become rare. Bandwidth had increased 20-fold. New features had been added. The official reports credited these improvements to Peltharian Chief Engineer Korth, but Nixara found the actual technical documentation. Every improvement had been designed, implemented, and tested by Sophie Bennett. Korth had signed off on her work and claimed credit, but he had not contributed to the actual engineering. Nixara moved on to other infrastructure projects. The Vaxorian transit system, which connected 50 worlds in a fast and efficient network, was officially credited to Vaxorian Transportation Minister Velkin. But the archive records showed that the system had been designed by a human engineer named Alex Rodriguez. His name appeared on all the original design documents, all the testing reports, and all the modification proposals. Velkan's name appeared only on the final publication that announced the system's completion. The judicial reforms that had streamlined the Council's legal processes were officially attributed to the Council's legal committee. But Nixara found drafts of the reform proposals written by human legal scholar Hannah Price. She found correspondence where Hannah explained legal concepts to committee members. She found meeting notes where Hannah's suggestions were discussed and then presented as if the committee had thought of them. The pattern was everywhere. Humans had been doing critical work throughout galactic civilization, but the credit for that work had gone to their alien supervisors. Nixara expanded her search. She looked at medical research. The breakthrough treatment for Peltharian genetic syndrome, which had saved that entire species from a fatal inherited disease, was officially credited to Peltharian researcher Dr. Yorth, but the actual research had been done by human doctor Chris Palmer. Yorth had been the department head who submitted the final paper, but Palmer's name appeared nowhere in the publication, even though he had done all the experimental work. She looked at artificial intelligence development. The advanced AI that managed council logistics, scheduled meetings, and coordinated administrative tasks was supposedly designed by a Mindari programming team. But the archive contained the actual source code, and it was full of comments written in English by a programmer named Emma Stone. The comments were jokes, personal notes, and explanations of complex algorithms. The Mindari team had not written this code. They had managed a human programmer who wrote it. She looked at military technology. The shield systems that protected Council military ships had been developed by human physicist Gary West. The targeting computers that improved weapon accuracy had been programmed by human engineer Nicole Murphy. The faster-than-light navigation improvements that made travel safer and more efficient had been calculated by human mathematician Victor Hughes. In every case, the human who did the work received no credit. Their alien supervisors took the recognition, the awards, and the promotions. Nixara felt sick. She had been part of this system. She had filed reports, processed documents, and maintained records that erased human contributions. Not intentionally, she had simply accepted what she was told. When a Peltharian scientist published a paper, she filed it under the Peltharian's name. She never thought to check if someone else had done the actual work, but it was worse than just stolen credit. Nixara began finding another pattern. Humans had not just been contributors, they had been fixers. They had been the people who solved problems that others could not solve. She found a report about a diplomatic crisis 20 years ago between the Gentari and the Kelthians. The two species had been on the verge of war over a border dispute. Official records said the crisis was resolved by brilliant negotiation by Council mediator Vorth. But Nixara found internal memos showing that Vorth's human assistant, Dan Murphy, had been the one who actually negotiated the compromise. Dan had spent weeks meeting privately with both sides, finding common ground, and crafting a solution that both could accept. Vorth had simply presented Dan's solution as his own. She found construction records showing that every major building project in the past 50 years had employed human structural engineers in key positions, not as lead architects. That credit went to famous alien designers, but as the people who actually made sure the buildings would stand up, the people who solved the practical problems, the people who turned beautiful designs into functional structures. She found trading records showing that human merchants had been crucial in maintaining stable commerce across the galaxy. They had not controlled the largest trading companies, but they had been the ones who could work with any species, who understood everyone's needs, who found ways to keep goods flowing even when political tensions ran high. The more Nixara searched, the clearer the picture became. Humans had been everywhere. In every department, every project, every initiative, not in the top positions, not getting the recognition, but doing the essential work that made everything function. And now, they were gone. Nixara prepared her report with shaking hands. She knew what it meant. The galaxy had not just lost a junior member species, it had lost the species that had been holding civilization together. She presented her findings to the Council in a closed emergency session. The chamber was packed. Every major delegate was there. The mood was tense. Nixara displayed her data on the main screen. She went through example after example. Infrastructure projects, medical research, diplomatic solutions, engineering innovations. In every case, humans had done critical work that was credited to others. For 200 years, Nixara said, humanity has been the invisible workforce that kept our civilization running. They maintained our communication networks. They designed our transportation systems. They solved our diplomatic crises. They created our medical treatments. They built our buildings. They programmed our computers. They managed our trade routes. And we never acknowledged any of it. She pulled up a financial analysis. Human labor was also dramatically undervalued. We paid them as junior staff while they did senior-level work. We promoted their supervisors while they remained in assistant positions. We gave awards and recognition to aliens who did nothing except take credit for human achievements. The chamber was silent. Nixara continued. But the economic exploitation is not even the worst part. The worst part is what we lost when they left. Humans were not just workers. They were problem solvers. They had a unique ability to work across species boundaries. They could understand Peltharian logic and Mindari intuition and Gentari honor codes all at once. They could translate between cultures in ways we could not. They found solutions that satisfied everyone because they could see perspectives that we missed. She displayed data on current failures. Since humanity left, we have experienced system failures across every major category: communication, transportation, medicine, construction, diplomacy, trade. Everything is breaking down. And we cannot fix it because we do not understand what the humans built. We never bothered to learn. Ambassador Thelkor stood slowly. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past few months. I need to make a confession to this council. I have reviewed my own records. My assistant for 15 years was a human named Dan Murphy. I have checked every major initiative I was credited with during those 15 years. Every single one originated from Dan. The ideas were his, the research was his, the solutions were his. I simply presented them and took the credit. He paused. I told myself I was mentoring him. I told myself that as the senior partner, it was appropriate for me to receive recognition. But the truth is simpler. I stole his work. And I am not the only one in this chamber who did so. Around the room, other delegates shifted uncomfortably. Some looked angry. Others looked ashamed. But nobody denied it. Vorth the Gentari stood. I dismissed the humans constantly. I called them simple. I called them primitive. I laughed at their proposals. His voice was rough. But I have reviewed the trade route proposal that human ambassador Jake Morrison presented, the one I rejected without consideration. If we had implemented it, we would have saved 2 trillion credits in the past 6 months. The proposal was brilliant, and I rejected it because a human suggested it. More delegates stood and shared similar stories. The Mindari representative admitted that humans had been doing most of the actual medical research in his department. The Trilithian construction minister admitted that human engineers had been essential to every major building project. The Kelthian trade representative admitted that human merchants had been the glue holding trade networks together. The confessions continued for hours. By the end, the picture was complete and damning. The Galactic Council had systematically exploited, dismissed, and disrespected humanity for 200 years. And now that humans were gone, galactic civilization was collapsing. The council speaker finally called for order. We must face reality. We need humanity back. Not as they were, but as they should have been from the beginning. We must acknowledge our mistakes. We must offer true partnership. We must give them the recognition and respect they always deserved. Will they even listen? Asked a delegate. We have been sending messages to Earth for months. They do not respond. Then we send a delegation, the speaker said. We go to them. We apologize in person. We admit what we did wrong, and we ask if they will give us another chance. Thelkor stood again. I should lead the delegation. Much of this crisis can be traced to my actions. I dismissed human warnings about the Cronus Rift. Those colonies could have been evacuated if I had listened. The deaths are on my conscience. Others volunteered. The heads of every major council species agreed to join the delegation. Not junior diplomats, not subordinates. The actual leaders, because this was too important to delegate to anyone else. What if they refuse? Someone asked quietly. The chamber was silent. Nobody had an answer. If humanity refused to return, the galaxy would continue its slow collapse, and they would deserve it. The delegation that approached Earth space was the largest and most important in galactic history. 15 ships carrying the leaders of every major council species. The Vaxorian Grand Speaker Kelthus commanded the flagship. Beside him were Thelkor, Vorth, and representatives from the Peltharians, Mindari, Trilithians, Kelthians, and a dozen other species. They came unarmed. Their ships broadcast continuous messages of peace and apology. They announced their intentions on every frequency, and they waited at the border of human space for permission to enter. No response came. For 3 days, the delegation sat at the border. Their messages went unanswered. Their requests for communication were ignored. The human defense fleet, which had positioned warships at every entry point to human space, simply watched them and said nothing. On the 4th day, a single human warship approached. It was a destroyer-class vessel, smaller than any ship in the delegation fleet, but heavily armed. The ship took up position directly in front of the delegation and opened a communication channel. Admiral Sophie Bennett appeared on their screens. She wore the uniform of Earth Fleet, and her expression was cold and professional. The delegation recognized her. She had been the assistant technician at Gateway Station. Now she was an admiral. "State your purpose," Sophie said. Her voice carried no warmth. Grand Speaker Kelthus stepped forward. He was old, even for a Vaxorian. He had led the council for 30 years. He had negotiated peace treaties and trade agreements with hundreds of worlds, but facing this human woman, he felt like a student before a disappointed teacher. "We come to apologize," Kelthus said. "We come to acknowledge that we were wrong about humanity. We treated you with disrespect and contempt for 200 years. We dismissed your contributions. We stole credit for your work. We ignored your warnings. We failed you in every way that matters." Sophie's expression did not change. "Earth has received your message. Is there anything else?" "Yes," Kelthus continued. "We also come to ask if humanity would consider returning to the Galactic Council. Not as you were before, as equals, as partners, as leaders. The galaxy is falling apart without you, but that is not why we are here. We are here because we finally understand what we should have understood from the beginning. You deserved better than what we gave you." Sophie was quiet for a long moment. "You say the galaxy is falling apart. Tell me what problems you are experiencing." Thelcor stepped forward. "Gateway Station's communication network has collapsed. We cannot repair it without your technical expertise. The Cronus Rift has expanded and threatens more systems. We have no working early warning system. The Kelthian plague continues to spread because we cannot understand your medical research. Construction projects are stalled. Trade routes are breaking down. Diplomatic conflicts are escalating into violence. And you need humans to fix these problems." "Yes," Thelcor admitted. "We need your help. But more than that, we need to acknowledge something we should have admitted 200 years ago. Humans were not junior partners in galactic civilization. You were essential partners. You were the people who made everything work, and we never recognized that." Sophie looked at each member of the delegation. "You had 200 years to recognize it. Why now?" Vorth stepped forward. The Gentari delegate looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Because we were blind. Because we were arrogant. Because we believed that age and technology made us superior. We were wrong. The humans who worked under our supervision were better than us, smarter, more creative, more capable of solving complex problems. But we could not admit that." He paused. "I personally dismissed dozens of human proposals during my time on the Council. I have reviewed them all. Every single one would have improved the galaxy. And I rejected them because I could not accept that a human might have a better idea than me." Other delegates shared similar confessions. The Peltharian engineering chief admitted that human engineers had been the real talent behind every project. The Mindari medical director admitted that humans had been doing breakthrough research while aliens took the credit. The Trilithian construction minister admitted that human project managers had been the only thing preventing his department from complete chaos. Sophie listened to all of it. Her expression never changed. When they finished, she spoke. "I will relay your message to Earth. The decision about whether to rejoin the Galactic Council will be made by our government. But I can tell you right now what the conditions will be if we return. No more stolen credit, no more dismissed warnings, no more being treated as assistants when we do senior-level work, no more having our ideas ignored until an alien repeats them. We will not be your silent workforce anymore." "We understand," Kelthus said. "We would expect nothing less. If humanity agrees to return, we are prepared to offer full partnership status. You would be recognized as one of the founding species of the Council, with all associated rights and privileges. Your votes would carry equal weight to any other species. Your representatives would hold senior positions. Your contributions would be properly credited and compensated." "And what about the deaths?" Sophie asked quietly. "The Cronus colonies that died because you ignored our warnings. What about them?" The chamber fell silent. Thelcor stepped forward again. His voice was heavy with grief. "Those deaths are my responsibility. Commander Ryan Blake warned us. He gave us data, projections, and a clear timeline. I dismissed his work as flawed. I said his concerns were overblown. I convinced the Council to ignore the warnings. Those people died because I was too arrogant to listen to a human." Tears ran down his face. "I cannot bring them back. I cannot undo my mistake. All I can do is admit what I did and promise that if humanity gives us another chance, we will never dismiss your warnings again." Sophie was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "Wait here. I will take your message to Earth. A response will be provided within 3 weeks." The channel closed. Sophie's ship turned and headed back into human space. The delegation settled in to wait. On Earth, Sophie delivered the Council's message to President Lisa Chen and the World Council. The debate that followed lasted for 2 weeks. It was broadcast live across all human worlds. Every human citizen had a voice in the decision. Some argued that humanity should never return. The Council had proven they could not be trusted. Let them suffer the consequences of their mistakes. Others argued that humanity had a responsibility to help. People were dying. The Kelthian plague was spreading. The Cronus rift was expanding. Whatever the Council had done to humans, the innocent civilians suffering now deserved assistance. But most agreed on a middle path. Humanity would return, but only on their terms. The galaxy needed to understand that humans could not be taken for granted. That respect was not optional. That partnership meant equality. Jake Morrison and Kate Sullivan helped draft the response. It was firm but fair. Humanity would rejoin the Galactic Council under strict conditions. Human contributions would be acknowledged and credited. Human warnings would be given full consideration. Human representatives would hold positions of authority. And most importantly, humanity would maintain the ability to leave again if the Council returned to its old behavior. Protocol Exodus would remain active, updated, ready. A reminder that humans would not tolerate being dismissed ever again. 3 weeks after Sophie had met with the delegation, she returned to the border. The delegation was still there, waiting patiently. She broadcast the response. "Earth has decided to rejoin the Galactic Council. Ambassador Jake Morrison will return as the head of human delegation with full authority to negotiate terms of reintegration. But understand this clearly. We are not returning as we were. We are returning as equals. If the Council cannot accept that, we will remain in human space." Kelthus bowed his head. "We accept, and we thank you for giving us this second chance." 4 months later, Jake Morrison stood in the Galactic Council chamber once again. But this time was different. The entire chamber rose as the human delegation entered. It was a gesture of respect that had never been offered to humans before. Jake approached the central podium. Kate Sullivan and 50 other human representatives stood behind him. This time, the chamber was silent. Everyone was listening. "Humanity has returned to the Galactic Council," Jake said, "but we return with conditions that must be accepted by all member species. These conditions are not negotiable." He pulled up a document on the main display, the new Charter of Galactic Partnership. "First, humanity will be recognized as a founding species of the Council with status equal to any other member. Second, All past human contributions to galactic civilization will be properly documented and credited. Third, human representatives will hold senior positions in all council departments based on merit and expertise. Fourth, human warnings and proposals will be given full consideration and may not be dismissed without thorough review. Fifth, humanity will maintain sovereign control of our space with the right to control our borders as we see fit. He paused and looked around the chamber. And sixth, if the council returns to treating humanity with disrespect or contempt, we will leave again. And next time, we will not come back. The vote was called. The motion passed unanimously. Every species in the council accepted the new charter without modification. Over the following months, humans returned to galactic space. But the dynamic was completely different. Sophie Bennett returned to Gateway Station, not as an assistant technician, but as Chief Network Administrator, with full authority over the entire communication system. Ben Carter returned to the Mindari homeworld as Director of Cross-Species Medical Research. Alex Rodriguez became Chief Engineer of the Vaxorian Transportation Department. Humans took positions of authority throughout the galaxy. They were finally recognized for what they had always been: the talented professionals who made civilization function. The repairs began. Sophie rebuilt the communication network with a full team of human engineers. The system came back online sector by sector, better than before. Ryan Blake returned to the Cronus sector with a military task force to contain the rift. Emma Stone took over the Council's AI systems and began improving them with full credit for her work. Ben Carter, working with a team of human doctors, finally completed the cure for Kelthian blood rot. This time, his name was on the research paper. The Kelthian representative came to Earth personally to thank him. "You saved my people," he said, tears in his eyes. "And we never even knew your name before. I am sorry for that." Ben accepted the apology with grace. "Just make sure it does not happen again." The galaxy healed slowly. Trust was not rebuilt overnight. But humans proved their value again and again, and this time they received recognition for it. A year after the return, Jake Morrison stood on a balcony at the Earth Embassy, looking out at the council complex. Kate Sullivan joined him. "Do you think this will last?" she asked. Jake considered the question. "Maybe, maybe not. But at least now we know we can walk away if we need to. That changes everything." Kate nodded. "They know it too. Protocol Exodus scared them. The idea that we might leave again keeps them honest." "Good. That is how it should be. Respect maintained by mutual choice, not by hierarchy or tradition." In the council chamber, a new statue had been erected. It showed a human figure working at a console, head down, focused on the task. The plaque read, "In recognition of 200 years of human contribution to galactic civilization, may we never forget again." Humans passing the statue had mixed feelings about it. Some found it meaningful, others thought it was too little, too late, but everyone agreed it was better than being ignored. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. The quiet ones, the ones working in the background, the ones you dismiss and ignore, might be the most important people in the room. And if you drive them away, you might discover that nothing works without them. Humanity had taught the galaxy that lesson the hard way, by leaving, by letting everything fall apart, by making the cost of disrespect visible and undeniable. And then, when the apology finally came, by having the strength to return on their own terms. The galaxy would remember.